Da-da-da. So, Amber, what is a public matter for this week?
So, the two topics that we have are the Second Amendment, so the being able to bear arms.
Are you going to read that for us?
I will. And the government debt, and what is happening with the debt of America.
I'll talk about the debt.
Yes.
You're going to talk about the Second Amendment. Which
is funny, because I think you have more guns than I do, but that's all good.
No.
I would bet.
No.
Alright, so let me start with reading the Second Amendment. So, in short, the Second Amendment states that, as an American citizen, you have the individual right to bear arms. The amendment also firmly establishes that the government cannot infringe on that. So...
What is the exact wording? Do you have the exact wording in front of you?
I thought I did, but that's not the exact wording.
No.
Because the exact wording is...
Let's read for the audience the exact wording, which I haven't memorized either, but many people have. It's not very long.
No, it's only like a sentence.
Yeah, well, yeah, it escapes me a little bit. But we need to talk about one part of that. We spoke of it last week when we were discussing this show.
Yeah. Okay, so it says, well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right. Now, what were some of the things, what was at least one thing we were talking about last week in regards to the wording in the Second Amendment?
Okay, so, well-regulated has changed definitions.
What was the original intent, what was the original meaning of well-regulated?
I know that we looked it up.
Well-regulated, I'll help you.
Yeah, because you actually told me more than the dictionary told me.
Yeah, well-regulated. So, it says well-regulated. Regulated meant appointed. And a well-appointed home would be what?
A well-equipped.
Well-furnished home?
Yes.
So, in regards to the Second Amendment and Old English, they were referring to a well-regulated militia, not in that they were regulated, they were well-appointed, well-equipped.
Yes.
The latest and greatest. So, any of the people who are opposed to the Second Amendment, who thinks that it means regulation, is sorely misinformed. So we want to inform all of you that well-regulated means well-appointed, which means the latest and greatest and the best. And so I'll let you take the rest. I don't want to take your thunder here.
No, it's fine. I mean, it just means that because now it says it means to be good morally.
Yeah, sure.
So when you Google what does well-related or regulated or it means that you have to be good, and it's got a total different meaning than what it intended to.
No.
And I think that's because if you were to really understand what it meant, it would go against what everyone thinks.
Correct.
It actually, like, what it actually says. So if you misinterpret it, then you're the ass, not them. Because they've checked the dictionary, so they know.
Right, they've also changed the meaning over a period of time. And, for instance...
Right, see, okay, so it says, so what does the phrase well-regulated mean? It's an adjective, well-regulated, of a business, military outfit routine. Controlled or supervised to conform to rules, regulations, and traditions. So that's what the definition is now.
Right.
Well-regulated militia. So that's what it means now. So that would mean that we should be able to be supervised to have our guns.
Right, exactly.
Is what they're saying it means. So if they change the definition of what it means now as opposed to 17th century, then we would have to surrender our guns.
Right, it works into their narrative, doesn't it?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So don't you find that interesting that they lack... Or do they willfully do this, do you think? Or do you think they ignorantly do this?
Okay, well, if I type in, what does well-regulated mean Latin, it says, what does well-regulated mean? So the first thing that pops up is controlled and supervised to conform to rules and regulations. Okay, so then you scroll down, and then it says, what does it mean in 17th century? It says well-organized, well-armed, and well-disciplined.
There you go.
So well-organized, well-armed, well-disciplined does not sound like controlled, supervised, or conform to rules.
That's correct.
It sounds like the exact opposite of that particular thing.
Now,
so,
how many politicians have you seen on television or heard that use the newer term
well-regulated?
Well-regulated.
Meaning controlled or supervised?
Correct. How often have you seen this or heard this?
Oh, it's all the time.
Right.
Because they're trying to, well, here's the thing. They've got to PC it up. They've got to change it. They've got to make us understand that, like, you can't say, I think it was, so, like, back in the day, it was, retard was an old one. Mentally challenged, and I think it's called something else now.
Right.
We've transitioned to a different one. So, like, all these terms, like, retard was actually a medical term. I mean, I think idiot was, too. I think if you called someone an idiot, it actually was a medical term back in, like, the 60s or the 50s or something. Like, a different time. Like, it was actually considered a medical thing.
Right.
To be an idiot.
So they're changing...
So they're changing the definition, which then changes what the actual meaning of the Constitution means.
Right.
So instead of saying... well-organized or well-armed, it says controlled, supervised, and to conform to rules. So now all of a sudden we're changing what gun laws mean. We're going to put it as you get to be regulated, you have to conform to rules.
Right.
I mean, that's totally against what it says is the Second Amendment. It says well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. You're going to tell me controlled and supervised is in that sentence?
It's part of a free state.
Right. So it doesn't make sense. I mean, the quote that I have for this particular start of the topic is from Joel Barlow. He was an American poet. He was a diplomat, politician. He actually was an ambassador to France. It says, the foundation of everything is that the people will form an equal representative government and that people will be universally armed.
Right.
A people that legislate for themselves ought to be in the habit of protecting themselves.
Right.
So he's talking about a free state.
Yep.
And you also being well armed to handle that free state. Because essentially the government is supposed to work for you. I mean, it's the same thing as, like, like, it's funny, we were just talking about this, about police officers. What is their motto? It's to protect and serve. Who is it to serve? It's me to serve. You serve me. You signed up to serve me and protect me as a citizen.
Right.
Not as an illegal immigrant, as a citizen.
Right.
Of this free state, I have gotten the right to get you to protect and serve me. I mean, that is essentially what's happening. And we have all of these people, even in the government. I believe they're, like, when you walk into the different buildings, it says to serve, to protect, to preserve the Constitution. I mean, these people are doing the exact opposite of that.
Right.
I mean, we are going and losing our, like, we're actually fighting for our Second Amendment when it states that that's number 2.
Yeah.
Like, I want to say that the Founding Fathers probably fought between which one should be number 1 and which one should be number 2.
It's possible.
I mean, here's the reality. Free speech is awesome. And I mean, I guess if you think about it, like most people talk about, they're like, you want free speech, and then how do you back it up? You have to back it up with guns.
Correct.
Because, I mean, how does it work when you have a law? What's at the end of that law?
Eventually, as a gun.
So how is it that they're allowed to have guns, but we're not allowed to have guns? How is it that the president can walk around with Secret Servicemen having guns, but people can't have them in their homes, and we need to start giving them out, and they need to start registering them? I'm sorry, I think gun registration is ridiculous.
Do you think there's a gun registry right now?
Of course there is. They want you to. They want you to register your guns, so when they come knocking to get your guns, they want to know how many you have. So they can compete and have double that.
Have you seen the videos of ATF agents visiting
different people?
People's homes, and they know what they own?
Yeah.
That tells me right there that there is a registry.
Oh, yeah.
And they say when you, when you purchase certain firearms items or a firearm, that FBI check that they do is only, they don't maintain those records?
Oh, they totally maintain those records. Come on.
That's how the ATF knows what you have. That's how they know to come to your door.
Right.
Force reset triggers, for instance, they know that. And that's not from sales records. That's because when you purchase certain items, they know what you have. But getting back to the Second Amendment.
So the point is that you have to be willing to fight for the freedoms that you have. And the only way you can do that is with a gun. I'm sorry, that's realistically the only... I mean, if someone comes at you, you think that they're going to be unarmed? They're not going to be unarmed. I mean, even, people who are criminals and people who aren't supposed to have guns, they get guns. They have guns. They're the ones that are probably more armed than most people.
Now, do you think that also the Second Amendment here, let's see, they had just won a conflict with England over rights. Now, we know that the first 10 amendments are what? They're all individual personal rights. So with for instance, the Second Amendment, do you think that the founders intended for you to have essentially an unlimited right to bear arms, or should it be regulated in some fashion? Now, yeah, that's kind of a leading question, but what's your answer? Do you think that they should be regulated or they should be unregulated?
Gun rights? Do I think gun rights should be regulated? Mm-hmm. Is that what you're asking?
Do you think they're unlimited? Do you think that is a unlimited right? Do you think that somebody should have
as many guns as they want?
As many as they want and equal with whatever the government has. And we're talking firearms here. We're not talking nuclear weapons. I hate that argument. We're talking individuals' right to a firearm.
Okay.
Because that's specific. Do you think that the individual should have the same firearms as the government has?
Yes.
I do too.
I think they should have more. I think that you should essentially have more have more guns than the government.
Now, getting back to the Second Amendment and why we have the first 10 anyway, do you think that has to do with just taking care of somebody stealing your horse or your cow or breaking in and harming your family? Or do you think it has a broader meaning?
So I think it actually means all of the above. So someone breaks in, you have to be able to arm, you have to be able to handle yourself. I mean, here's the thing. The reality is back when they were putting this together, there were some states that didn't have a lot of people close together.
Right.
So who are they going to call?
Right.
They have to handle it themselves.
Right.
They had to take care of themselves. It was very much a free-for-all in how you regulated yourself. You kept yourself safe, your family unit safe. That was your community.
Mm-hmm.
They also wanted to be able to fight against any country or any territory or any kind of person that was coming to take their life, liberty, or the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
I mean, that is the whole basis of it. Life, liberty. I mean, somebody's going to come at you for your life. You're going to fight with a gun.
Right.
I mean, you can't use your arms. They have a gun.
Right.
You're losing.
Now, they just fought an oppressive government.
Yes.
Do you think one of the intents of a free state, not meaning it's a free for all, it's a free state, freedom and liberty, do you think that they were also implying that you would defend yourself against an oppressive government, potentially?
Of course. It says the security of the free state. So you're necessary to fight and bear arms by any means necessary with bear arms. I mean, it's not misspelled. It's not misspoken. It is intended to. If the military gets out of line and doesn't do what you, the person who was in charge of paying their bills, voting for different things, these committees, these different policies that can just be lobbied and changed without being voted on, that's unconstitutional. You can't pay a fuck ton of money and get some bill or get some policy changed. We didn't vote on it. That's not how any of this works.
So a free state would imply that the people within that state are free from oppression, not only from people that would take it from them individually, like a robber or a thief or something, but even the government who would oppress them. They had the right to bear arms against that government that would oppress them. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
You radical.
I guess I am.
You are an extremist.
I mean, the thing is, the government wasn't meant to have unlimited power. The government was meant to have limited power.
And they would say your right to own a firearm should be
limited,
regulated.
Right, that's
there.
The government. But
there
the government needs to be limited in their power. How is it they have the power to say that to me? They serve me.
Right.
They're politicians that are being paid by my tax dollars, making way more than I do on my money that I'm working for, and they're going to tell me that I'm not allowed to have my Second Amendment right? I mean, there's only 10 Bill of, like, the main 10. I mean, all the rest are added in for, yes, women's right to vote, awesome, blah, 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 whatever. But the main 10 these should not be infringed on by the government at all whatsoever.
It kind of says that in the Second Amendment, doesn't it? It says not to be infringed. What do you think infringed means? Isn't that the slightest bit of encroachment? I mean, infringement?
Yes, it means that if you step out of line as a government entity, you need to be put back in line. And if that means by force, then the people have the right to take back their government by force. Because that's what's intended. It says regulated militia. And I also think that militia was also meant for, I know that it means like military and all of that, but realistically, back in that time, it meant that local people gathered together and were able to form a group of people who felt the same way.
Would you like to hear a quote from George Mason, a debate with the Virginia Convention on the ratification of the Constitution? And this is taken from June 16th, 1788. This is George Mason. It says, "I ask you, sir, what is the militia?" Now, the militia, you'll hear, it's men of an age of this and is, and you'll see that definition, but it's much broader, actually. And again, George Mason, 1788. "I ask you, sir, what is the militia? It is the whole people, except for a few public officials. That is the militia."
Yeah, I read that years ago. That it was intended, it meant the people. It meant just people together. A whole group of people have decided they don't believe that these government officials are doing what they want them to do, so they're going to take it by force. What, the government has guns?
It's spoken of so many times in various quotes from various founders. It's spoken of in the Federalist Papers, anti-Federalist Papers. Would you like to hear one more?
Yes, I will take it.
I have so many. Okay? I have so many. I can just keep going on about it. And I'll give you the link to this. I'll tell everybody where I'm getting this from because I am cheating. I do my homework, but I haven't done it to the point where somebody else has done it. And you can verify these as well, and I encourage you to verify anything that we've said here. Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers, 184 to 188. "The best we can hope for concerning the people at large is that they be properly armed." That means well appointed. Alexander Hamilton, the Federalist Papers, at 184 to 188. And there's so many more. If you want cliff notes to the Constitution and what the founders said, we will give you that at the end of the show. But you need to read these things. This is what the intent of the Constitution is. This is what they wanted for us. Don't believe your modern politician who sits there and says this or that. Go to the origins, the genesis of these documents, these people. They were not silent about these things. So I encourage you to read these things. So I didn't mean to take your thunder, but I can keep going. You know me.
All right. Well, I'm going to say this last quote, and then we're going to talk about your.
Oh, I love the Second Amendment.
The.
Do you want a firearm?
Do I want one?
Do you have one?
I do.
Are you armed right now?
No, I'm not armed right now. Not the second.
Not the second?
No. But I do have one. I actually like to shoot guns, to be honest. But anyways, all right, so I'm going to say, so this is Patrick Henry. So he's mostly famous for the famous words at "Give me liberty or give me death." Mm-hmm. That's actually his best quote that everyone knows, right? But he said, "Let him candidly tell me where and when do freedoms exist when the sword and the purse were given up from the people. Unless a miracle in human affairs imposed, no nation ever retained its liberty after the loss of the sword and the purse. The great object is that every man be armed, everyone who is able may have a gun." So that's what Mr. Give me liberty or give me death. It's funny because I think most people think Ben Franklin actually said that, but it was Patrick Henry. He was a American attorney and a politician.
See, these are things that they said then. They knew exactly what was in the Constitution. They knew exactly what the meaning of this was. When you hear politicians say, you know, these things need to be regulated, we're not trying to take your Second Amendment. That is all fucking bullshit. They are trying to take your right incrementally. And can I add one more in? Because I love reading from the founders.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, there are so many of these. What country can preserve its liberties if its rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. And that's from Thomas Jefferson in a letter to William Stephen Smith, 1787. Okay? Look these up. And again, we'll give you these. I'll give you, I don't know where you got yours, but
I think the same place.
Same place. There is a plethora of them. There's just tons of them, and you'll enjoy reading them. So, and it'll give you a thought process, and it'll give you something to defend your position on. So, anyway.
So, what's yours about the debt?
So, right now we are nearly coming up on $32 trillion in debt, with about.
Excuse me.
And we have unfunded mandates of maybe $100 trillion coming due. And our gross domestic product is about 23 trillion. Yeah. So right now, if you were to confiscate every bit of wealth in the United States right now, you could not pay off our national debt. And we operate at a deficit. The deficit adds to the national debt. I think it's very clear, you know. So if each day you are operating on the fact you're spending more than you have in your pocket, it adds to the overall debt that you have. So right now we're looming at about $32 trillion. And you go to the debt calendar that keeps. Have you seen that?
Yeah, it just keeps ticking. Isn't
that disgusting? Isn't it?
Bomb. So wait, let me ask you. When we started, this administration. So when Biden took office, do you know what the debt was then?
Yes, I believe it was somewhere in the vicinity of about 28 or 27 trillion. Don't quote me on that.
And so we're now up to 32?
Nearly 32 trillion. And right now we have this nonsense going on of this...
because we got to raise the debt ceiling. We
got to raise the debt ceiling, or they think we're going to default on certain things, which is another thing. Look this up. We won't cover this in the show, but you need to look this up. Many of the things that they say we're going to default on is absolutely not true, because these things are, it's like a trust fund. They are funded regardless. Money's still going into the coffers. These things will be paid. There are certain things. There's discretionary spending and non-discretionary spending. Discretionary spending means that these are things that they have discretion over. They can choose to or not to. Then there's non-discretionary, like, for instance, it's in the Constitution. We have to have a defense budget, for instance. But let's go on to something that is as near and dear to my heart as the Second Amendment. And remember, all the first 10 amendments are personal, individual rights. So let me. I am so unprepared. So, let's talk about right now they say that we need to fund this and we need to fund that. Here's why we do not, and we are not supposed to fund things that are not constitutional. So go into the Constitution, read Article 1, Section 8, read down through all the clauses, and you'll not find one power, that's the authorization of powers to Congress. Congress actually has the purse strings, okay? So this is what happens. If you do not have the authority under the Constitution, you're not supposed to be doing it. Now they found these loose, ridiculous things, but and I ran into a certain senator recently at the grocery store. I can't tell you because it'll disclose exactly where we are. But you may find out one day where we are, but not today. But benevolence is not part of the Constitution. It is not part of our government. And if you do not know what benevolence is, I'm going to encourage you to look it up. Benevolence is spending on things that you believe are important. It's like a giveaway. It's benevolence, you know. You're being benevolent. Benevolent associations, they give away money for various causes and stuff. And I can tell you right now that the lion's share of our budget right now is benevolence. Welfare is not under the Constitution. Any part of welfare, disaster relief, you know, we're talking federal level now. States can do other things because under the 10th Amendment, the powers not granted to the federal government are obviously the states.
Right.
So, yeah. So right now, let me read you some quotes. We're gonna go into a couple of quotes here again, and there is many of them. And Thomas Jefferson is one of my favorites. Here we go. This is from James Madison in a speech to the Virginia Ratifying Convention, June 6, 1788. The powers of the federal government are enumerated. That's Article 1, Section 8. It can only operate in certain cases. Understand, this is the run rules. This is the authority of Congress. The powers of the federal government are enumerated. It can only operate in certain cases. It has legislative powers on defined and limited objects beyond which it cannot extend its jurisdiction. That includes benevolent spending. So that includes disaster relief, you know, welfare and all that, and it includes Social Security, and we could do a whole damn show on why Social Security exists today and why it's unconstitutional. And that is a very slippery slope to go down. And I know a lot of people would hate me because they're getting Social Security benefits. And I don't mind you getting your money back, but it shouldn't have fucking existed in the fucking first place.
Alright, get back to your quotes.
Yeah, another one. This is from Thomas Jefferson, a letter to Joseph Milligan, April 6, 1816. To take one, because it is thought his own industry and that of his fathers has acquired too much in order to spare to others who, or whose fathers have not exercised equal industry and skill, is to violate arbitrarily the first principle of association, the guarantee to everyone, the free exercise of industry and the fruits acquired by it. That means your money is yours. It's not the government's.
Like what you have worked for should be intended for you. It shouldn't be intended for. So I guess that would kind of put a nix on the what is it? Like everyone wants the income. There's a word for it. Like everyone gets an income. It's like some kind where we all just start paying it to the pot and the government pays us. We all get equal income. I forget. There's actually a word that goes with it that you get.
Me.
Anyways, the whole point is that what you work for, what you earned, is your money. That would also go in line with not paying income tax, but that's a whole other topic. Don't get me started on income tax. That's a whole shit show, but keep going.
All right, so again, I'm going to fill you up with quotes from the founders. Again, James Madison, 4 Annals of Congress, 1794. In 1794, when Congress appropriated $15,000 for the relief of French refugees who fled from the insurrection in Santo Domingo to Baltimore and Philadelphia, James Madison stood on the floor of the House to object, saying, "I cannot undertake to lay my finger on the article of the Constitution which granted the right to Congress of expanding on objects of benevolence," I spoke of that before, on objects of benevolence, the money of their constituents. That means that benevolence is no part of the Constitution. It does not exist. And what we've been doing for 100 years or more, spending taxpayers' money on benevolence is unconstitutional. It should end. So if you think that you were right in theory, read these. You were right. We should not be spending money on the majority of what we're spending money on today. It does not exist. They do not have that authority. They have the authority to tax. They have the authority to spend, but only on those things that are outlined in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. They cannot create anything. And I'll tell you another thing, too. Don't think that the Supreme Court is going to, if this ever gets challenged, and it probably will never get challenged because both sides of the aisle are very much aligned with spending for benevolent purposes.
Well, they just want to spend money. Some want to spend money on dumb things, and some want to spend money on other things that are just as dumb, but they seem legit.
So, I don't know. We could keep talking about this, or what do you want to say?
Well, I think that wraps it up for us today.